I've seen the city throw away a lot of things, bottles, names, promises they couldn't stand another winter. But that morning the trash made a different sound. Not the clink of glass or the soft collapse of wet cardboard. A dry, papery crack under my boot. The sound of a memory trying to lift its head. I stepped back, half buried beneath coffee grounds and rain. A corner of old photo paper blinked up at me, yellowed, frayed, holding on the way a leaf does long after the tree is let go. I reached into the bin behind the riverfront diner and pulled it out carefully. The way you handle something that might still be alive. A family looked back at me. 4 people in the stilted sunlight of a suburban summer. A man trying to stand taller than his mistakes. A woman whose smile kept one secret for herself. A little girl with a ribbon too bright for the film. And a boy holding a toy plane at that doomed angle that says, "We haven't learned gravity yet." Behind them, a White House leaned a little to the left, like it had been listening for years. I almost put it back. Almost let the city finish what it started. But there was a ghost in the frame that didn't belong to them. Near the edge, in the soft blur, where photographs pretend nothing important lives. A figure stood half hidden by the trunk of a maple. Shoulders I knew, jaw I used to shave clean, eyes I hadn't trusted in a long time. Me. The world didn't tilt, exactly. It just remembered a slope I'd been ignoring. The smell of the alley, old grease, fresh rain, something sweet going wrong, tightened around my throat. I turned the picture slowly, hunting the way we hunt, where we're not sure we want to find. The back held no date, only fingerprints smudged into time and a line in blue pen, rushed but clear. For when you're ready. I don't carry many things with my initial on them. Most of what knew my name burned down or walked away. But the letter sat there like a door that had been waiting for my hand. I looked up and down the alley. No footsteps, no breath. Just the diner's back door, propped with a broken mop, and the river talking to itself beyond the wall. The morning was the color of old tin. A delivery truck coughed at the curb and kept going. I lifted the photo to the light, careful not to smear what the years hadn't. In the reflection on the house's front window, there was more. A second face. The photographer. A woman. Hair pulled back. Head tilted, as if she were listening to the moment she was making. I knew that tilt. Not the person, but the habit. People who listen like that collect truths they can't always carry. The house number sat crooked on the port post, 214. The mailbox beneath it sagged the way mouths do when news stays too long. The maple that half hid me wore a dark scar where a branch had been cut. My gut said South Side. My bones said I'd stood there before, a long time ago, wishing I was someone else. "You going to eat that?" Benny's voice came from the mouth of the alley, cart rattling, bottles clinking like a choir that lost the melody but kept the faith. He peered at the rectangle in my hand and whistled. "Souvenir?" "Trash," I said. "Same thing," he grinned. "Worth depends on who's remembering." I showed him the edge, the blurred figure. He squinted, then leaned back, eyebrows up. "Hell, Walt, that's your ghost. Looks like he borrowed my face." "City finally return in your deposits," he said, tapping the cart. "Careful, refunds come with interest." He rolled on, humming something that didn't survive the winter. I was alone again with 4 strangers and a mistake that looked like me. The diner door swung once, letting out a wedge of heat and a smell of bacon, then closed like it had changed its mind. I slid the photo into the inside pocket of my coat, where I keep names the city forgets and the 3 good sentences I've written in my life. It sat over my heart like it had a right to be there. The day widened by a few grudging inches. I walked the perimeter of the block with the picture in my hand. Holding it up, against the world, like a detective in a movie I never finished. Different hydrants, wrong fence, no maple scar. The alley gave me nothing, except a bus transfer soggy enough to fail twice and a receipt from the diner. Timestamps 4:12 a.m. Someone had dumped the photo before the sun remembered us. I went round front. The diner's neon open stuttered between optimism and honesty. Inside, the counter had that shine only grief and bleach can buy. The man running the place had shoulders like a bridge, and eyes that had learnt not to chase things. I took a stool. He poured coffee without asking. The cup chipped at the lip like it had been arguing with the floor. "You from the shelter?" he asked. "From under it," I said. He nodded. "No judgment, just weather. You lose something." "Found something," I said, and set the photo on the counter, face down. "Maybe it belonged to one of your early birds." He flipped it, looked long enough to care, short enough to know better. "That's a good house," he said. You recognize it. Houses like that all look the same right before they stop trying." He slid the picture back with 2 fingers, then tapped the blue line on the back. "What's the W stand for?" "Someone who owes explanation," I said. He studied me, the kind of look that measures whether your question deserves a map. "Try the payphone at Kenzie and 19th, he said. "Back when people still used it, folks taped notes under the shelf. Directions, meetups, confessions they didn't want to say out loud. Some of our night crowd still treats it like a corkboard. Why tell me?" He shrugged. "I like when stories finish." I left a dime I couldn't afford next to the cup and stepped back into the morning, which had decided to be honest about the cold after all. The walk to Kenzie cut through blocks that used to sell promises and now sold their boxes. Pigeons argued over a bread end. A bus sighed in resignation. The city tasted like metal you keep in your mouth because you don't have pockets. The payphone stood where he said, glass cracked, handset taped, numbers worn to ghosts. Inside, the shelf wore scars of knives and love. I felt under it. Nothing. Then paper. Crisp and deliberate, taped flat against the underside where rain couldn't reach. I peeled it loose. Half an index card, edges squared with a blade, block letters in the same impatient blue. 214 Maple. Back door. Noon Lel. Maple. The number. The letter. My pulse did that old boxing glove trick against my ribs. Noon wasn't far off. Some meetings happen, whether you believe in them or not. I folded the card and the picture together and walked. The closer I got to Maple, the more the city changed its accent. Fewer horns. More dogs that knew their streets. Chain-link fences that believed in second chances. The kind of block where summer light hangs around, even in winter, as a rumor. When I turned onto the street, the house was waiting. White paint in retreat, porch steps canted from too many apologies, the mailbox holding its breath. The maple scar looked fresh, even though it wasn't. The number 214 leaned the same way it had in the photo, as if the address itself were tired of being found. I took the long way past the front and circled down the side path, my shoes remembering a rhythm I didn't teach them. The backyard held what backyards hold when time gets distracted. A rusted grill, a lawn chair that dreamed of June, a sandbox pretending not to be a grave for small shovels. The back door was painted a blue that had argued with the sun and lost. At eye level, taped to the glass with the kind of care you only use on letters that hurt. There was another note, same blue pen, same blocked letters softened by a hand that had learned to hurry. If you're really him, knock 3 times. If you're not, leave this alone. I stood there with the city, breathing over my shoulder and the picture warming in my coat. The wind ran its fingers through the maple and brought the smell of old grass and something, like lemons, the cleaner people use when they want rooms to forget. I knocked once, twice, 3 times. The house took the sound and swallowed it. Locks moved inside, one, then another, then the special kind you only install after the first 2 fail you. The door opened the width of a face. A woman in her 50s, hair pulled back in a pencil. Eyes holding years I recognized, not because I'd lived them, but because I'd watched them through the glass of other people's kitchens. She had a small scar near the eyebrow, the deliberate kind from a doctor, not a fall. She looked at my face like it was a book she half remembered hating in school. Her breath hitched once. Then she saw the corner of the photo peeking from my coat. The expression that crossed her mouth wasn't relief. It was decision. "You took your time," she said. Her voice had smoke in it. Old, sweet, almost kind if you didn't listen to the underside. "I was waiting to be ready," I said. "The city doesn't wait," she answered, opening the door just enough for me to step into a kitchen that smelled like lemons and resignation. "I'm Lila," she said, closing us in. "And before you say anything, understand this. I didn't throw that picture away to forget. I threw it away to see if you would find it." She held out her hand without reaching for mine, palm up, requesting the photo like a witness requests a vow. I placed it there. She didn't look down. She kept her eyes on me, measuring whether I'd brought truth or just the costume. Behind her on the table, a small metal box sat open, its velvet throat empty, indentations in the fabric where something had slept for a long time and left. In the next room, a clock ticked with the kind of precision only grief buys. "You don't remember me," she said, and it wasn't a question. "I remember the habit," I said, "just not the day." "Then we'll start with what the camera kept," she said, "and work toward what it couldn't." She set the photo on the table between us like a knife-turned handle first, then slid the metal box closer with 2 fingers. "If you're really Walter Gray, this belongs to you as much as it ruined me." The wind pressed its ear to the blue door. The lemon smell lifted and let the older house scent through. Coffee, dust, something floral that insisted on surviving. I stared at the empty velvet shape in the box and didn't know yet whether it was a space waiting to be filled or a hole the years had dug for me. Outside, a delivery truck downshifted. Inside, the clock counted a second that would not come back. "Tell me why the trash knew my name," I said. Lila's mouth tightened. "Not cruel, not kind, exact. Because the truth doesn't die in the dark," she said. "It composts. And sooner or later it feeds something." Lila didn't blink for a long time. She stood there, one hand resting on the edge of the table, her thumb tracing the empty velvet outline inside the box. The kitchen light was soft, but relentless, the kind that reveals more than it comforts. "I didn't mean to find it," I said finally. "The photo, I know," she replied. "You never meant to find anything. That's why life has to keep throwing it at you." She sat down slowly, as if every motion had to pass through memory before reaching the present. Her chair creaked. "Mine didn't dare." "I used to live here," I said, though the words felt unsure even as I said them. "You did," she answered. "And for a while, so did I." The clock in the next room ticked louder, like it wanted a say. She reached for the photograph again, this time turning it toward her. "Do you know who they are?" she asked. "The family," I said. "I'm guessing yours." "Not all of them," she said quietly. "The boy was mine. The girl wasn't. And the man in the picture, he was supposed to save us both." Her fingers trembled against the paper. "He told me he'd come back," she whispered. "Said he just needed time to fix things. He never did." Years later, I found this photo in a box at a pawn shop. Someone had sold it for $3.50. I bought it because I needed proof that I hadn't imagined him. Her eyes lifted to mine. I didn't realize until much later that the man standing behind the tree wasn't him. It was you. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like the world holding its breath. I don't remember that day, I said, or that house. But if I was there, it must have been before everything fell apart. You were a friend of his, she said, back when he used to bring food to the shelters. You looked up to him, wanted to help people like he did. She smiled bitterly. Funny thing, isn't it? The man who helped everyone except the ones who needed him most. Her voice broke slightly. He was my husband. The words hit the room like a slow bell. I sat back. The husband? The one who left? She nodded. He left one night after promising he'd come home with money from a job. He said it was the last time he'd do something dangerous. The next morning the police came instead. They said he was gone. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Some tears dry into habits. I tried to move on, she said. But when I found that photo, I started wondering what really happened. Then I saw your face. You were there that day, Walter. That much is clear. And I think you know more than you want to. I rubbed a hand over my face. It's been too long. The mind throws things out when it can't afford to keep them. Maybe, she said, but not the heart. The heart keeps receipts. She stood and crossed to a drawer, pulling out a small folded paper. She placed it in front of me. This was inside the box before it went missing. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was rushed, uneven, like someone writing from a moving car. It said, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back. Tell Lila I tried. Tell her I found him." No signature. I looked up. "You think this was from your husband?" She nodded. "It's his writing. The only person he could have meant by him was the man who promised to pay him. The one who sent him to that job. And who was that?" She hesitated. "You." The room spun a little. "Lila, you don't remember," she said. "I believe that. But forgetting doesn't make it untrue." I stared at the paper again. The ink had bled in the middle, but not enough to hide its desperation. Why would I send him anywhere? "You ran a repair shop back then," she said. "Small jobs, quiet ones. But you also took favors from people who didn't want their names on paper. My husband said you owed one of them money, and when you couldn't pay, they offered you a way to clear it. You convinced him to take your place, and said it would be quick." She leaned forward, eyes hardening. "He trusted you." I felt my pulse climb my throat. "And he didn't come back?" "No," she said. "He didn't." The clock ticked again, steady and cruel. "I buried what was left of him without answers," she said softly. "Then years later I found that picture with you in it. You standing there watching him, like you'd come to make sure it was done." My voice cracked before I could steady it. "You think I had something to do with his death?" "I don't know what I think," she said. "But I know I need to hear what you remember." "I remember noise," I said slowly, "and rain, and the feeling that someone was following me. But maybe that's every night in this city." Lila folded her hands. "Maybe the photo was the city's way of returning what it couldn't bury." Her tone softened. "Maybe it's not about guilt. Maybe it's about what you'll do now that you've found it." I looked down at the photograph again. The boy's toy plane gleamed under the kitchen light. Behind him, my blurred figure seemed to be watching, not the family, but something beyond the frame. "What if the photo isn't proof?" I said quietly. "What if it's a message? From who?" "From him," I said. "Your husband." Her breath caught. "You think he left it?" "Maybe not with his hands, but maybe with his story." She looked at the box again, that empty velvet cradle. "Then find the rest of it," she whispered, "before it's too late." The clock chimed once, sharp as a blade. Outside, the wind rattled the porch. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked and stopped, like it remembered why. I pocketed the photo again. If there's something left to find, I'll find it. Lila nodded. You better. Because if the city kept that picture all these years just to hand it back to you, it means it's not finished. I stood. Then neither am I. The street outside 214 Maple had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from exhaustion. I walked until the house turned small in the distance, until its windows looked less like eyes and more like the absence of them. The photo in my pocket felt heavier now, not because of paper, because of what it carried. The city stretched around me like a half-buried secret. Every alley hummed with the same electricity, the past still waiting to be heard. I stopped at a corner store that sold more cigarettes than groceries and borrowed their phone. The owner, an old man with hearing aids that probably worked better than he pretended, didn't ask questions when I said I needed the directory. He just pointed to a torn page hanging by a nail. Under repairs, automotive, there it was, a name I hadn't seen in years. Gray & Sons Repair Shop. The address was gone, blacked out by ink that had bled into the paper like regret. I traced the edge with my finger. Maybe that was mercy. The man behind the counter cleared his throat. If you're looking for the old shop, you're late by about 20 years, he said. Condemned after the fire. Fire? He nodded. Basement caught it first. Whole place went up fast. Nobody died though. At least that's what the papers said. What about the owner? He shrugged. Never found him. Rumor was he left town. Another said he lost everything and went under. Depends who you ask. I thanked him and stepped back into the cold. The air had that smell old fires leave behind, something between smoke and sorrow. I followed the directions my memory offered, the ghost map of a life I'd buried under too many winters. When I reached the old block, there wasn't much left. Just the charred skeleton of a building crouched between two warehouses. The sign out front was nothing but rust and a few ghost letters, Ray and Sons. The rest had peeled away. The gate was open, hanging from one hinge like it was tired of keeping secrets. I stepped through. The ground was littered with ash that refused to blend into the dirt. The wind pushed through the gaps in the wall, carrying the faint smell of oil and rain. I could almost see it, as sharp as it used to be. The shelves of tools, the wooden counter, the sound of metal finding purpose. I remembered laughter too, though faint. A man's voice, confident and worn. You tighten it until it squills, then you stop, he'd said once. The kind of advice that sounds mechanical but isn't. That was him. Lila's husband. His name came back slowly, like a coin from the bottom of a river. Robert. I saw flashes then. A job offered by someone whose handshake felt more like a trap. Late nights, calls that ended with silence. Promises made out of fear, not trust. And Robert, always showing up with kindness I hadn't earned. He'd offered to help me out of a debt. I'd told him it was simple, nothing dangerous. A pickup, a delivery, no questions. He'd smiled, said, then, it's not really help, is it? I thought I was giving him a chance to make money. But all I gave him was a way out of this world. The realization hit like a slow punch. I knelt beside what was left of the workbench, the wood dark and split. Something glinted near the base, a corner of metal half buried in soot. I brushed it clean. It was a watch. The glass cracked, hands frozen at 11:47. On the back, faint but visible, were 3 initials scratched by hand. R.G. Robert Gray Whitman. I turned the watch over in my palm. The metal was cold, but not empty. It felt like it had been waiting. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. Didn't expect to see anyone here, a voice said. I turned. A man stood by the fence, late 40s, heavy coat, face half hidden under a hood. His eyes studied me with the patience of someone used to being ignored. "You knew this place?" I asked. "Worked across the street when it burned," he said. "Night shift. Saw the whole thing. Wasn't just fire though. Started with a car explosion. They said it was gas leak, but I saw a man run out before it caught." "What did he look like?" "Tall. Limped. Blood on his sleeve. Carried something small like a box." "Did he make it out?" The man shook his head slowly. "No one saw him again. They said the fire took him. But I found this a few days later, in the alley behind the fence." He reached into his coat and pulled out an old Polaroid, wrinkled, edges burned. It was the same house, the same maple tree, but this time no family. Just smoke curling from a window and a single word scrawled on the back in blue ink. "Sorry." I looked at him. "Where did you find this?" "Under the tire of a truck that hadn't moved in years. Thought about tossing it, but something told me it mattered." "Do you know who left it?" He studied me for a moment, then frowned. "Maybe I do now." He handed me the Polaroid and walked away without another word. I turned it over again, the word sorry staring up like an accusation and a prayer at once. When I left the lot, the sky had gone, the color of paper ash. The wind stung. I stopped at a payphone, the same kind of relic that refuses to die. My reflection in the glass looked older than I remembered, older than I wanted to admit. I dialed the number Lila had written years ago on the inside flap of a Bible she left at the shelter once. I wasn't sure it would still work, but the line clicked and her voice came through, steady, waiting. "Lila, did you find anything?" "I found what's left," and I hesitated. "You were right. It wasn't an accident. But it wasn't murder either." Her breath caught. "Then what was it?" "Guilt," I said, "and fire. I owed someone money. Robert took the job for me. He didn't know what he was walking into. They wanted to make an example. When I found out, I tried to stop it. I was too late." There was a long pause on the line. "And the picture?" she asked. "I think he took it before he left. Maybe to remind himself what he was doing it for. Maybe to leave proof that I was there." Silence. Then she said, "So the photo was never about him forgiving you. It was about you forgiving yourself." I leaned against the cold glass. "Maybe both. You're not the same man," she said softly, "but you still carry him. I don't know how to stop." "Maybe you don't," she said. "Maybe you'll just start carrying him differently." The line went quiet except for the hum of distance. Then she whispered, "Bring the photo back tomorrow. Let's finish what the fire didn't." "I will." I hung up, slipped the Polaroid beside the other photo in my pocket, and started walking back toward Maple. The streetlights flickered, one by one, like they were lighting a path that didn't belong to the city anymore. When I reached 214 Maple again, the night had already folded itself around the block. The porch light was off, but a faint glow slipped through the cracks of the curtains, the kind of light that comes from candles or memories. I hesitated at the door, hand hovering above the faded blue paint. The photograph felt like a heartbeat in my pocket. I knocked twice before realizing that part of me didn't want her to answer. She did anyway. Lila stood there, coat wrapped tight, the same lemon scent lingering faintly in the air. Her eyes searched mine, not angry, not forgiving, just tired of waiting. "You found it, didn't you?" "I found more than that," I said. "Then come in. Let's bury it together." The kitchen looked the same, except for one thing. The metal box was gone from the table. In its place sat 2 cups of coffee, steaming faintly. She motioned for me to sit. I did. She poured without asking how I took it, because she already knew I wouldn't. "I went back to the shop," I said. She nodded. "I figured you would. I found his watch, the one he wore that night." Her hands froze mid-air. "It stopped at 11:47, I said. "That was the time of the explosion." Her eyes lowered. He was supposed to call me before midnight. Said he wanted to hear my voice before finishing the job. She looked up again, voice trembling. Did he suffer? I shook my head. No, it was fast. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding that breath for years. Then at least he kept one promise. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the ticking of the same relentless clock in the next room. Then she said, "Do you know what was inside the box?" I shook my head. "Letters," she said, "dozens of them. From him, written over the weeks before he died. But I never got them. Someone took them from the post office before they reached me." Her eyes met mine again. "That someone was you, wasn't it?" I froze. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small envelope, yellowed at the edges, my name written on it in that same blue ink. "I found this hidden behind the lining of his old jacket. It's yours." I took it with trembling hands. The paper felt like bone. I unfolded it carefully, each crease a decade. "Walter, if you're reading this, then you know what I chose to do. Don't carry this as your sin. Carry it as your lesson. I took your place because I still believed in what you could become. But if I don't make it back, promise me you'll take care of her. Tell her I never blamed you. Tell her I forgave you before it even happened." The signature was there at the bottom, Robert Whitman. My throat closed. He forgave me. Lila's voice cracked. "He always did, but I didn't, until now." Tears filled her eyes, glimmering under the weak light. He used to say, "Forgiveness isn't letting go of pain. It's deciding to stop teaching it how to breathe." I folded the letter slowly, pressing the crease with my thumb. "All these years I thought he died hating me. He died saving you," she said, "and, in a way, saving himself." The words hung between us, like the smell of rain before a storm. "I can't undo it," I said quietly. "You're not supposed to," she replied. "You're supposed to live like it mattered." The wind outside pushed against the windows, making the candles flicker. She stood and walked toward a cabinet near the sink, pulling open a drawer. When she returned, she held the metal box. She placed it in front of me, then opened it. Inside, instead of the velvet emptiness from before, lay the missing letters, worn, folded, real. "I want you to take them," she said. "I can't. You can," she insisted. "You were part of his story. Maybe now you can finish it." I looked at the letters, fragile things, holding more weight than my own life ever had. I took one, the topmost, and opened it. The handwriting was rushed, but familiar. "Lila, if I don't come home it means I failed. But if Walter finds this, it means I didn't. Tell him that truth doesn't end where guilt begins. It only begins again there." I closed the letter, hands shaking. "He knew I'd come back. He hoped you would," she said. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, the storm that had been holding its breath finally deciding to return. Lila reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "You can stop running now, Walter." I nodded, eyes wet. "I don't know how." "You start by forgiving yourself," she said softly, "and by remembering that not everything the city throws away deserves to stay forgotten." The lights flickered, then steadied. The air smelled faintly of ozone and old photographs. I took the stack of letters, tucked them gently inside my coat, beside the photo, and stood. "He wrote these for you," I said. "He wrote them for both of us," she replied. "But only one of us came back to read them." She walked me to the door. The rain had begun again, thin, cold, but clean. At the threshold she said, "The photo, keep it. It found the right hands." I nodded. "And the letters? They're yours, until you understand them," she said. "Then bring them home." I stepped into the rain. The door closed softly behind me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking away from something, but toward it. The city looked different under the storm. The lights blurred into halos. The streets shone like veins. I stopped under a street lamp, pulled the photo from my coat, and held it up against the rain. The ink began to bleed, the faces softening, the colors fading into one another, until all that remained clear was the outline of that blurred figure behind the tree. Me. But this time, I didn't see a ghost. I saw a witness, and maybe, finally, a survivor. I walked through the rain until the streets began to thin, until the lights turned into reflections instead of directions. The city felt quieter, almost reverent, like it knew I'd finally stopped fighting its silence. I found myself under the bridge again, the same place where most of my stories begin and end. The fire from the night before was gone, but a faint circle of smoke still marked the ground. I crouched beside it, the stack of letters pressed against my chest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of what was missing, only the presence of what remained. I took the photo from my pocket. The rain had smudged most of it, but not completely. The little girl's ribbon still shone faintly. The boy's toy plane still pointed upward. And in the distance, behind the tree, the shadow that used to haunt me had finally softened. I could barely recognize my own outline anymore. Maybe that was mercy. I placed the photo on the wet concrete beside the ashes. It lay there trembling in the wind, a heartbeat away from disappearing for good. You'd be surprised how often this city teaches you the same lesson, that the things we throw away don't vanish. They wait. They learn your name. And one day, they find their way back, not to accuse you, but to remind you that nothing stays buried forever. I thought of Robert, the man who died carrying my mistake, but left his forgiveness in every corner of this city. I thought of Lila, the woman who spent half her life trying to forget and the other half learning to forgive. And I thought of myself, the man who found a photograph in the trash and discovered that sometimes what you throw away isn't the past. It's the person you were afraid to be again. The rain grew heavier, washing the soot from the stones, the guilt from my hands, the years from my breath. I opened one of the letters, the ink already blurring, and read the first line aloud, though I wasn't sure if I was reading it for him, for her, or for me. You were never lost, Walter. You just stopped looking in the right direction. The words hit somewhere deep, not in the chest, but in the part of the soul that still remembers light. I folded the letter and slipped it back into my coat, then leaned against the cold pillar of the bridge. Cars rolled above like distant thunder, the city alive again in its strange, imperfect rhythm. I smiled, the kind of small, broken smile that carries both pain and peace. The world hadn't forgiven me, but maybe it didn't need to. Because forgiveness, I realized, isn't the city forgetting your name. It's you learning to say it without shame. I closed my eyes and let the rain do what it's always done. Remind everything that it can still be clean. After a while I whispered softly, more to the river than to myself. She was right. The truth doesn't die in the dark. It composts. And if you're patient enough, it grows back as something worth holding. I looked one last time at the photograph lying in the rain. The ink had finally dissolved completely, the image gone. But somehow, that felt right. Because maybe some memories aren't meant to stay sharp. Maybe they just need to fade, slowly, kindly, until all that's left is understanding. The river moved beneath the bridge, carrying the last of the ashes away. I stood, pulling my coat tighter, the letters warm against my chest, the night breathing softly around me. "My name is Walter Gray," I said, voice steady against the hum of rain and traffic. And tonight, I learnt that, sometimes, what we find in the trash is exactly what God meant for us to keep. The wind shifted, the city sighed, and the fire, somewhere deep inside, flickered back to life.